She's about 5'2" in height, slender figure, carries herself very gracefully, has a very small head, beautiful brown soft hair, dark complexion, gray eyes, soft low voice, very sweet and full of feeling, and a quiet, low but very casual laugh. Her eyes are very expressive and in constant use. Prefers Thackeray, Dickens, Ingelow, Tennyson, Longfellow. Evidently has a temper, but is generally of an easy disposition, but full of mischief. Caroline Danske Dandridge was born in Copenhagen on the 19th of November, 1854. She was the youngest child of Henry Dandridge of Virginia and Caroline Lawrence of Flushing, New York, and offspring of two strongly individualistic families. Her daughter Serena wrote much later, "The little girl destined from the cradle to charm her fellows all unconsciously. She swayed those she met with a subtle way queer to some, denied to others, but inborn and ineradicable as the years go by. And I suppose after years, eternity will but carry on the beginnings of individuality begun here on earth, rolled, beaten, tried, and tested during our earthly years." 2 years before her birth, the Honorable Henry Dandridge had been sent to the First Minister Plenipotentiary of the Court of Denmark with the special object of negotiating a treaty with Denmark's king, whereby American ships would be allowed to enter the Baltic through the straits, free of duty. Late in the evening, a shy man would often emerge in the king's court seeking Henry Dandridge for a chess game. Hans Christian Andersen, the children's story spinner. In November 1858, Henry Dandridge had indeed come home to Shepherdstown and his family to great joy. Daughters Danske and Mary watched from a window from their home at the southwest corner of Princess and German Streets. In the center of the street that November night was a huge bonfire, and her father's joyous, speechifying face shone in the hot blaze, making his old friends cheer more and more. Then his daughters noticed the adults in their house had become silent, huddled. Their father, after 6 years in Denmark, had come home, but without warning, pneumonia had taken him. Danske remembered him distinctly. She was her father's pet, his little witch, and he gave her the name Danske, or Little Dane, because she was born in Denmark, and because in Shakespeare's Hamlet, Act 2, Scene 1, "You shall do marvelously wisely, good Rinaldo, before you visit him, to make inquire of his behavior." "Me lord, I did intend it." "Very, very well said. Look you, sir, inquire me first what Danskes are in Paris." Danske's mother, as a widow, with her 3 children, had built an addition to an old house south of the village with woodwork of black walnut, so common in those days, and there she took her young family just before the storm of the war. She let the storm roll over her head in Shepherdstown rather than retire in safety to family in Flushing, New York. The Dandridge children seemed to have taken to writing books as ducks to water. They all complained that paper was too scarce and too hard to write on, but they utilized every scrap that came to them. Danske's foil was poetry, with a few romantic stories for good measure. Minnie, I'm told, was fairy tales, with which she could enthrall her younger brother and sister. Now Danske was already a prodigious writing talent. Of little Danske it can be said, the ink was in the baby. She was born to write a book, and she was. It was not long out of the cradle before she began to wield her pen. She presented a book of original poetry called A Present to the Honorable A.R. Butler, with a note in the book saying he must excuse the writing, as the paper was hard to write on, and compared to Shakespeare and Milton, were not so good either. Another note calls attention to the fact that the these and thous are customarily used instead of yous in poetry, and apologizes for a few yous that had slipped in.
I am inspired tonight. Poetic numbers swelling from my soul will have their vent. 'Tis my destiny to write. 1862. To my cousin Netta. Your cheeks are red as the rose that in the garden doth repose, surrounded with its lovely foes, the queen of all the flowers. Poplar Grove, April 4th, 1862. Danske only 8 years old. As this was done in a hurry, it is not straight and well written. Minnie, my sister, is beautiful as a summer's day. My sister, she is as beautiful as a flower in May. I also love my sister dear. I love her, yes, my readers hear. My name is Danske Bettinger, and on this page you see the name which I so much adore. The name is Harry Lee. Then do not scorn me when I write this little song for thee. Thou art my heart's true delight, my darling Harry Lee. Then take this little note, I meant it but for thee. And do not scorn me when I say, my darling Harry Lee.
When on September 19th, 1862, Poplar Grove, their home, was the center of random artillery shelling from federal batteries on Maryland's Ferry Hill, all of Danske's family hurried and became safely ensconced in their cellar. But 7-year-old Danske stayed behind despite the family's pleadings to join them in the room below. Finally, she closed her reading matter, R.M. Ballantyne's Coral Island, and remarked,
Now I can tell my descendants that I finished a book during a battle.
Gaining in wartime sophistication, the 3 Bettinger children watched an artillery duel from their porch called the Greg Fight on July 16, 1863.
A brigade of federal cavalry had been encamped on our place for several days. An officer borrowed from Mrs. Bettinger, upon a request, a book from our library, Sir Walter Scott's The Lay of the Minstrel. About noon, we heard artillery firing in the distance. The Federals immediately prepared for battle, the men dismounting to fight as infantry. They had several guns with them, perhaps 1 battery, and these they placed on the crest of a low hill about 100 yards south of the gate of the grove, on the other side, west of the pike. The family sat on the back porch, and looking through the front hall could plainly see the fight on the extreme left. The Confederates drew nearer, and pretty soon there was a lively artillery duel. The group on the porch was just out of the direct line of the firing until a Union battery was struck and silenced by a Confederate shell. Danske's mother was thinking that she would never see the book again, but just at dusk, an orderly rode up to the house with the book in his hand and saying that the officer who had borrowed it was in an ambulance at the gate and wounded.
August 22, 1864, General David Hunter ordered the burning of Bedford, the childhood home of Danske's father, near Poplar Grove.
The hewn timbers still smoking of her childhood home, 54-year-old Henrietta Bettinger Lee, her 20-year-old daughter Netta, and the 54-year-old freed family servant, Peggy Washington, sought refuge at Poplar Grove. 9-year-old Danske heard their waves of sorrow and anger.
to Hunter. O cruel serpent, king of scorpions thou, curse on thy barbarous act. May never the goddess of pity send her smile upon thy blasted heart. Behold, on yonder verdant hill a house once stood. It was the house of love, of peace and glee. How soon that home was rendered desolate. By whom? O Hunter, 'twas by thee.
With so many soldiers passing, food was scarce in the grove, and the family lived largely on cornbread and dried apples. Once, little Danska's health was very bad. She was smuggled through the Yankee sentinels along the Potomac, and then in a sleigh to Baltimore and to a celebrated doctor there. On the return journey, they waited till midnight at Douglas's Ferry Hill for the boat that was to ferry them across. While waiting, I am told little Danska feasted on the books of Captain Douglas's fine library. The children had a private governess, a Miss Griffith, who must have been a highly competent teacher, and their alive minds developed rapidly.
After the war at Miss Williams' school, Danske graduated at the head of her class, completing 6 years of boarding school education.
Tuesday the 6th. Missed no lessons. Got 2 letters, one from Harry and one from Minnie. May go to Stanton to have my teeth fixed. Mrs. Meade has consented to it. It is all arranged. On Friday I will go. How glad I am. We all went to a concert tonight. I walked with Minnie Mahee. It was only 55 cents and well worth it. When we came home, I had a grand fuss with horrid Irene, as I of course took up with Minnie Mahee. Played croquet in the evening. Oh, why can I not lift the veil that hides my future? Just a little way, alas. I am inspired tonight. Poetic numbers swelling from my soul will have their vent. 'Tis my destiny to write. Letter Willowbank, New York, November 16th, 1870. Dear Young America Magazine editor, I have a proposition to make to you, of which I have been for some time thinking. It is more nor less than to offer myself at moderate terms as a regular contributor to your pretty little magazine. I flatter myself I know just what you want. Sensible, probably, and amusing stories, or improving bits of knowledge, and with all due modesty I may say that I shall do my best to please you if I am employed. Wednesday, August 9th, 1876. This is the morning of the great eventful day. Last evening we were to have a rehearsal. I am to be a bridesmaid, and the groomsman chosen for me is Mr. Stephen Dandridge, and they say he's the handsomest and most fascinating gentleman of them all.
August 18, 1876. Dear Miss Bettinger, I am afraid that I have done something to worry you, and though I do not know my offense, I am so sorry. Will you not show your forgiveness by letting me take you to the levels on Tuesday? Respectfully, A.S.D.
September 1st, 1876. He begged me to take him out under the apple trees. We strolled around and at last sat down under a spreading tree on the grass, and oh, how happy we were. Oh, dear Steve, I believe he loves me with all the warmth of a very deep and very passionate nature, and oh, how different he is from poor Francis Greene. May 3rd, 1877, married. April 1879, moved to the Grove, with infant firstborn Serena. I was a very young wife then, full of zeal and ignorance. And I was so callow as to invite a house full of ministers and friends to come and stay with me through council. Oh, the babies were small. I had a good-natured but very inefficient nurse. Council began. All the guests came and brought their friends with them. We kept open house. This cook sat in a rocking chair in the kitchen and cried. Her baby was old enough to be in mischief every moment, and its lungs were strong. The cook cried, and all the babies cried, and the nurse and I cooked, and the council wore its weary length away. I gave the bishop a dinner, I believe, but most of my recollections of that weird time are compounded of never-ceasing backache, headache, and a choice assortment of other aches dispersed about my wretched person, and of utterly sleepless nights. There was a sense that the foundations of everything were giving way, and that I had nothing to cling to save me from some frightful abyss. The council took place in smiling June, and in tearful April I was at last carried to a hospital. Not a minister shall enter my house except over my dead body. I am not afraid of all the ministers of the world now, for I shall be visiting the Congressional Library, the Botanical Garden, and reveling in ferneries, rockeries, books, and flowers. Happy, happy me. We ramble on, the stream and I, still singing, still companionless. We run to find beneath the sky some arid spot, some life to bless. The brook is dreaming of the sea, but I, fond spirit, dream of thee. The brook's bright waters flow and flow, all lush and green his track appears, and it is given me to know some choral of the chanting spheres. Our lives are tuneful as the birds, with rippled song and gentle words. And if sometimes we lurk apart in secret grot or covert dale, to bide a space and gather heart, anon we're laughing down the vale. Through rain or tears our forces swell, we find the sun, and all is well, all is well. Through rain or tears our forces swell, we find the sun, and all is well. The stream and I. When I began to be interested in gardening, I planned a retreat that's to be of animal loveliness. How easy it is to have such a garden in one's heart. The Shenandoah Valley Rail stopped for me at steps behind Rosebreak. In Washington, I could research on botany and my ancestors and enjoy the friction of daily life of the city. Davenport agreed to give me the diary of my great-uncle, Henry Bettinger, from the Revolution. The little farm was then a natural forest of old oaks and tulip trees, some of them 80 feet and 100 feet, and girthing from 14 to 19 feet. We turned out the grazing cattle and to give a chance for the native Virginia creepers to turn many rock breaks into beauty. Tom Devonshire, a short, strong African man who fought for the North in the late war, assisted during these days of splendid reformation. Sometimes when confined to the house by illness or on stormy winter days, I have felt as restless as a caged wild animal. But out of doors, I am in my proper place, like the free wild animal in the jungle. I am so happy that we have had a heavy rain, because I was beginning to feel quite wicked about it. It began when I woke up early this morning. The sound of the patter of the big drops on the tin roof of the veranda outside my window was such an unusual one that I could scarcely believe my ears. It seemed too good to be true. Soon it became a steady downpour that has washed away all my discontent. It rained until 1 o'clock, softly but sufficiently. Oh, one such rain as that a week would keep the garden fresh all summer. I am glad that I can dig and plant and weed as much as I please and shock nobody, not even the gardener, for I am the gardener myself and not easily shocked at that. And I am sure I enjoy my flowers all the more because I have prepared cradles for them and assisted at their birth and helped them at every stage from tiny seedlings to lovely blossoming maturity. One sumptuous oriental poppy, fully 8 inches across, has just unpacked her thin silk dress of flowing vermilion. It is the one note of brilliant color, the highlight that the picture needed. This blossom, erect on a stalk 4 feet in height, has 6 petals, while the others have but 4. The poppy is a very careless packer. Her fine dress came out of its trunk in many crumples, which take her maid, the breeze, several hours to smooth. But she does not care, beautiful, disorderly creature that she is. Oh, blessed people who see their gods spring up in their gardens. If any flower were worthy of worship, it would be the Madonna lily, also called the Annunciation lily, first brought to earth, according to the legend, by the angel who came to prepare Mary for the Savior's birth. This lily is the type of passional purity, not passionless purity, which is a poor, tame thing. The warm, throbbing purity of the innocent young girl is a different thing, and a better thing, according to my way of thinking, than the cold chastity of the nun. This is what the lily typifies, this passional purity with its rich fragrance and unspotted whiteness. The cinnamon rose is always the first to bloom at rosebreak. A pretty little Scotch briar is the second, and the hollyhocks have proved that they, too, have heroic souls. Only all the best clumps have been eaten by the cows, who have developed an extraordinary appetite for hollyhocks. Oh, I wish I could tell my flowers how much they help and comfort me, and yet, who knows? Perhaps they understand. They look as if they did. Yes, there is certainly an understanding between us. I love to water them most when they are in distress. Do they not breathe lovely confidences into my ears every day? And do I not open my heart as freely to them? No one who has a garden of flowers to love and be loved by need complain about being misunderstood. When I go to the garden with my troubles, the flowers know just what to do. They don't say a word. They don't torment me with senseless conversation. They just look at me, and their beauty makes me forget my cares, and their smiles restore me to cheerfulness, and their fragrance refreshes me and strengthens me to bear what I must. And so I go away serene again and thanking God for my garden. Surely, ugliness is the only sin of which flowers are capable, and that is usually man's fault who will not leave nature alone. If I could carry out all my fancies, I would have garden parties when certain flowers were in bloom. In May, I would have a violet fete, a fete of roses in June, and of lilies in July, and perhaps a fete of yuccas on some moonlit evening. In November, I would invite all my friends to a chrysanthemum party. The tables should be set on the lawn and decorated with the flowers of the day.